X says top accounts steal videos from other users as it announces new video. The consensus read is already outdated. What matters now is the second-order effect most commentary still ignores. We will map trigger, incentive shift, and downstream impact before the close. But buried in that announcement was something far more significant, a public admission that video theft has been systematic, widespread, and largely ignored until now. Here's what's happening. When a creator uploads a video to X, larger accounts with millions of followers are downloading that video, re-uploading it as their own, and collecting the engagement without any credit or compensation to the original creator. The stolen video then outperforms the original because of the account's reach. The algorithm amplifies it. The original creator watches their work generate millions of impressions, but in someone else's timeline. This isn't new. What's new is that X is acknowledging it, and more importantly, they're building tools to address it. The platform is introducing video editing capabilities directly within X, which means creators can remix, caption, and publish without ever leaving the platform. But the second part of the announcement is the leverage point. X is adding attribution and source tracking to videos. Why does this matter right now? Because creator economy is worth over $100 billion globally, and video is the primary asset. If you're a creator relying on X for reach and revenue, through sponsorships, course sales, or algorithm-driven visibility, you've been operating in an environment where your work has zero protection. A 10 million follower account could steal your 100,000 view video, scale it to 5 million views, and there was nothing you could do. The new tools change the economics of theft. Source tracking means re-uploaders can be identified. Attribution means the algorithm can weight original creators over reposters. And video editing inside X means creators have less incentive to take their content elsewhere, which also means less piracy surface. But here's the contrarian angle, this also centralizes video production on X. If creators edit, caption, and publish all within X, they're locked into X's ecosystem. They're not cross-posting to YouTube or TikTok as easily. X becomes the primary distribution channel, not a secondary one. For creators, that's both a win, native tools, better attribution, and a lock-in. For X as a platform, this is a retention play. TikTok's creator retention is higher than X's because TikTok has better native tools. YouTube has editing, post-production, and analytics built in. X's creation experience has always been minimal. These new tools close that gap. They also solve a moderation and trust problem. If creators feel safer that their content won't be stolen, they'll post more original video. More original video means more engagement, more time on platform, more ad impressions. For smaller creators in emerging markets, India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, this is significant because they rely on platform reach to monetize. In India, where creator economy is growing at 40% year over year, video creators often lose earnings because of uncredited re-uploads. Attribution tracking could mean the difference between a creator earning 50,000 rupees from a viral video or 500,000 rupees if they're credited and the algorithm prioritizes them. What's worth monitoring, whether the attribution system actually works. X has announced features before that didn't ship or shipped with major gaps. How quickly do they roll this out? Do larger accounts actually lose reach for re-uploads, or does the system just add a credit tag that doesn't affect distribution? And crucially, will creators actually use the built-in tools, or will they continue to edit elsewhere and just post the final file? The second thing to watch is whether this becomes a Trojan horse for deeper content control. If X can track video sources, they can also enforce copyright, limit certain content, and control virality in ways we haven't seen yet. That could be good for creators being stolen from. It could also mean X has more power to suppress certain voices or videos. The third signal is adoption speed. If creators start using X's native tools within the first month, that's a massive momentum indicator. If adoption is slow, it means creators still don't trust X's ecosystem or the tools aren't compelling enough. For investors and competitors, TikTok is still the video-first platform. YouTube still owns long-form and monetization. But if X can solve the attribution and theft problem while offering better creator tools than before, they're closing a gap in the creator-to-creator network layer. That's not a small shift. That's a viable lever for creator acquisition and retention. The bottom line, X is solving for trust and ownership in video distribution. That's not sexy, but it's foundational. Creators won't spend time and energy on a platform where their work gets stolen. Solve that problem, and you unlock a whole new class of creator investment. That's what's changing right now. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next. Watch the execution timeline, second-order market effects, and policy response to gauge what happens next.